First point. Money is not physical currency like coins or paper bills, but rather a trust accounting technology. Throughout history, people used various items for exchange. Cowrie shells, salt, furs, and grain were common. Subsequently, metal coins emerged, followed by paper receipts issued by merchants and early banknotes, which functioned as debt instruments. As states evolved, the authority to mint and issue money became a government monopoly. From the 20th century onward, most currencies were no longer backed by gold. Their value is now based on legal regulations, limited supply, and public acceptance for transactions. Contemporary money exists as digital records within ledgers maintained by banks and payment systems. Physical cash serves as a practical offline representation of these records. A key takeaway is that a currency's stability stems from its underlying institutions and the trust placed in them, rather than the aesthetic design of its banknotes. Fact 2 addresses inflation. Inflation is defined not as a price rise in itself, but as a reduction in the purchasing power of a single unit of currency. The statement, "inflation is 6% this year," signifies that acquiring the same collection of goods now requires 6% more money than it did in the previous year. Its danger lies in the compounding effect. Even a minor annual price increase accumulating over many years significantly diminishes the real value of past savings. Inflation negatively impacts cash reserves and incomes that are fixed, yet it benefits those who owe money, as the nominal amounts due do not change, effectively devaluing the money paid. A less obvious form, known as shrinkflation, occurs when producers decrease the weight or volume of products without altering the price. Conversely, deflation may seem appealing but poses risks. Consumers delay buying, economic activity stagnates, and debt obligations become more burdensome. Consequently, maintaining moderate, predictable inflation and implementing indexation are crucial. Fact 3. Compound interest is the primary engine for both building wealth and falling into debt. When interest is applied not just to the original amount, but also to the interest that is already accumulated, the growth follows an exponential path. The straightforward rule of 72 allows for estimating how long it takes for your money to double. Simply divide 72 by the expected annual rate of return. This principle also applies to debts and penalties. Credit cards with high interest rates can transform a small debt into a long-term commitment if you only make the minimum payments. Starting early is crucial. A year gained at the beginning of your financial journey has a greater impact than a year added at the end. Fees and taxes reduce the overall benefit, making low-cost and tax-efficient tools important when they are legal and accessible. The underlying mathematics are identical, but the final results can vary significantly. The fourth fact is that a budget isn't about forbidding joys, but about planning priorities, with paying yourself first being the primary entry. The pay yourself first method involves automatically moving some income to savings and goals right after the money comes in. This allows the remainder to fit your life rather than your life fitting the remainder. The zero-based approach assigns a purpose to every dollar. If it's not assigned, it will be spent. The envelope method introduces psychological friction. Having separate wallets for food, transport, and entertainment gives clear signals when to stop spending. The 50-30-20 rule is a guideline, not a strict rule, meant to be adjusted to your actual situation. It's crucial to consider irregular expenses. Equipment fails, taxes arrive, holidays occur. These require their own dedicated funds. Automation helps prevent setbacks, and daily tracking isn't micromanagement, but rather a form of feedback. Fact number 5. A reserve fund acts as personal protection against unexpected events rather than being idle cash. Its role is to provide time for a relaxed job search, recovery from illness, or handling unforeseen repairs without falling into debt. The standard advice is to have enough in this fund to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. If your income is irregular, aim for 6 to 12 months. The requirements for such a fund are straightforward: maximum accessibility of funds and minimal risk. This translates to choosing secure accounts or deposits with fast withdrawal options, rather than assets that fluctuate in value. It's advisable to keep this fund separate from your daily spending and not combine it with investments to avoid the temptation of using it for immediate needs. Surprisingly, even a small reserve can lower stress levels and lead to better decisions. When there's no immediate crisis, you won't be forced to sell assets at a loss or take out costly loans. Sixthly, let's consider insurance, which serves as a safety belt for your personal finances. Its purpose isn't to increase wealth, but to shield you from financial ruin when an uncommon yet expensive occurrence derails your plans. The fundamental principle is straightforward. Events that are rare and very costly are best shifted to the insurer's responsibility. This covers medical treatments, inability to work, loss or damage to your dwelling, and responsibility towards others. More frequent and less costly occurrences are wiser to cover with your own savings. Within an insurance policy, crucial elements are the deductible, coverage limits, and exclusions. A higher deductible means a lower payment to the insurer, but you'll pay more from your own funds. Limits set the maximum payout, while exclusions specify situations not covered. It is vital to grasp waiting periods and payout terms and to retain copies of documents and property photographs. A policy with vague conditions offers only a false sense of security. One customized for your family's and region-specific risks is a valuable instrument for maintaining stability. The seventh fact is this: diversification means not acquiring a wide variety of assets, but rather allocating capital across different risk sources that exhibit distinct behaviors. Assets such as stocks, bonds, cash, and real estate, along with both international and domestic markets, do not move in lockstep. It is precisely this divergence in their performance that helps to stabilize the overall path of capital. However, it is crucial to understand that correlations are not fixed. During periods of crisis, they tend to converge towards unity, causing a portfolio to decline uniformly and unexpectedly. Consequently, the importance of cash and high-quality bonds as a buffer against volatility cannot be overstated. Rebalancing is the process of returning to predetermined proportions. Assets that have appreciated are sold, while those that have depreciated are purchased, effectively implementing a strategy of selling at a higher price and buying at a lower price. Consideration of expenses and taxes is essential. Infrequent yet consistent rebalancing proves more cost-effective than frequent adjustments. Index funds with minimal fees frequently serve as a foundational element to which more speculative investment concepts are subsequently appended. The eighth fact is that money psychology is stronger than a calculator. We tend to spend more when using a card compared to cash because the pain of payment is reduced. A discount advertised as "today only" activates the fear of missing out. The "buy now, pay later" approach conceals the actual cost. The anchoring effect causes us to deem a price acceptable when it is presented alongside a clearly inflated one. Loss aversion leads us to hold on to losing assets until they are worthless. Mental accounting creates artificial funds from which gained money is spent carelessly. Simple remedies include taking a pause before a significant purchase, creating shopping lists and limiting impulse buying channels, setting up automatic transfers for specific purposes, physically separating bank accounts, and letting your shopping cart sit for 24 hours to cool down. Reviewing your annual financial overview monthly helps to contextualize spending, which reduces emotional influence and brings a sense of proportion back to your decisions. The ninth fact is about loans. A loan can be seen as paying for the ability to get something sooner. You receive an item or service now, and you pay for it later. The difference between the time of receipt and the time of payment is your interest overpayment. When assessing the cost of a loan, it's important to consider not only the stated interest rate, but also its effective cost, which includes various fees, insurance, and the specifics of interest calculation. In an annuity payment plan, the initial installments are largely composed of interest. This results in a slow reduction of the principal debt. Early repayment of a loan, especially within the first half of the term, can substantially decrease the total overpayment, provided there are no penalties for early repayment. Mortgage lending is based on collateral and the ratio of the loan amount to the value of the collateral. The higher the LTV, loan-to-value ratio, the higher the interest rate and the more stringent the borrower requirements become. A fixed interest rate ensures payment stability, whereas a floating rate carries the possibility of increased monthly payments if market interest rates rise. A credit card is the most costly form of borrowing if one does not consider penalties and loans from microfinance institutions. The grace period on a credit card is only advantageous if the entire debt is paid off before this period ends. Otherwise, compound interest begins to apply, which increases the debt amount. The 10th fact deals with taxes, which represent another dimension of personal finance. Tax systems vary by country, but the core principles are consistent. Taxes apply to income, capital gains, dividends, and property. Tax-deferred arrangements and tax deductions are also available, alongside progressive tax brackets and specific thresholds. Financial reporting, necessary documentation, and tracking the cost basis and holding duration of assets all influence the net amount received post-transaction. Holding assets for extended periods typically incurs lower taxes compared to short-term holdings. Moving funds between accounts that offer tax advantages and those that do not can impact overall returns as effectively as selecting a well-performing fund. Any tax optimization efforts must adhere to legal and transparent practices, as penalties for errors can easily erase any financial gains. The straightforward recommendation is to anticipate tax implications when planning transactions, and to seek information on your country's tax regulations from trustworthy sources. The 11th fact is that high income and wealth are not the same thing. Capital increases not because of the amount on a salary statement, but due to the difference between what is received and what is spent. This difference is known as the savings rate, and it is more effective than any secret strategy. If two individuals earn the same salary, one might automatically allocate 30% of their earnings towards goals and investments, while the other spends nearly all of it, increasing their consumption level with each pay raise. In a few years, their net worth, calculated as assets minus liabilities, will appear vastly different. Lifestyle inflation occurs subtly. This includes new subscriptions, purchasing upgrades because one can afford it, or the habit of paying slightly more for convenience. The solution is to establish conscious limits. Ensure that spending on pleasures does not increase faster than inflation. Plan to freeze spending levels when income rises, and regularly review your net worth, not just your bank statements. Income is a flow, while wealth is a reservoir. The 12th fact is that financial goals work when they have a destination, a time frame, and a method of measurement. Saving for everything is imprecise. Whereas, in 18 months, to make the initial payment for a home, I need approximately X amount and I will save Y amount monthly, creates a defined path. A practical architecture for goals is like buckets. Short horizons of up to 2 to 3 years are handled with highly liquid and low-risk instruments. Medium horizons utilize instruments with moderate volatility and clear terms. Long horizons, exceeding 5 to 10 years, are placed in market assets where price swings are anticipated, but the reward for enduring them is greater. The tendency towards present bias encourages immediate gratification. Automating deposits and visualizing progress help to mitigate this. A useful practice is a quarterly self-board of directors session to reconcile the amount, deadlines, and underlying assumptions, and to adjust the strategy calmly. Goals can evolve, but any changes should be deliberate, not a knee-jerk reaction to a news headline. The 13th fact is that investing is above all about managing expenses and discipline, and only later about selecting ideas. Fees are an unseen foe of compound interest. A difference of fractions of a percent annually over decades neatly reshapes the outcome. Index funds and ETFs with low expenses often serve as a base, as they offer broad market access without attempting to predict which single stock will boom. Active stock or fund selection can be successful, but after fees and taxes, it is difficult to consistently beat the benchmark. This is shown by numerous comparative studies. The practical takeaway is, if you don't have the time and competence, opt for a simple and cheap core. Market timing is alluring, but a substantial part of annual returns can come from a few strong growth days. Missing these days reduces the investor's result. Thus, a time in the market strategy plus periodic additions and rare rebalancing often triumphs over busyness. The 14th fact addresses currency risk, an inherent aspect of our interconnected world. When your income and spending occur in one currency while your investments are in assets denominated in another, currency exchange rate fluctuations directly impact your final results. The fundamental rule is straightforward. Maintain your emergency fund and plan for significant future expenses in the currency you will use for those expenditures. For investments, diversify across different countries and currencies to mitigate reliance on any single issuer or economy. When making currency exchanges, be mindful of spreads and commissions, as an apparently favorable exchange rate may conceal a substantial additional cost. Instruments designed for currency hedging exist to smooth out these fluctuations, but it's important to recognize that hedging comes at a cost and is not free, particularly for long-term investments. Currency movements can either boost or diminish investment returns over many years, and this is a natural occurrence. What matters most is that the currency risk aligns with your financial objectives and timeframes, and that your approach is systematic, involving clearly defined allocations, adherence to rebalancing rules, and consistent discipline. The 15th fact is about payment security, which is a combination of user habits and technology. Technologies like card tokenization and 3D Secure help lower the chances of data leaks. However, human error can undermine these protections. Common scam tactics include calls from people claiming to be bank employees, messages about urgent actions, or links to confirm transactions. The fundamental, though simple security rules are: never share confirmation codes or CVV numbers, avoid clicking links in messages about account blocking, and always call the bank back using the number printed on your card. It is practical to use separate virtual cards with lower limits for recurring payments like subscriptions or online shopping. Instant transaction notifications and the ability to quickly freeze a card via a mobile app are also beneficial. You should refrain from making payments on social media. Computers should have the latest software updates, and you should use unique passwords for accounts, store them in a password manager, and enable two-factor authentication. Checking your bank statements at least once a week is important because there are time limits for disputing transactions. Travelers should carry a spare card and copies of their documents. When making transfers, especially large ones, it is advisable to send a small test amount first. As a result of these measures, the risk is not eliminated but becomes manageable. The 16th point addresses pension planning, which is a project spanning decades. Its primary variables include the time horizon, the desired level of income replacement, and one's tolerance for market fluctuations. As the time until retirement lengthens, a portfolio typically incorporates a greater proportion of stocks, with risk being progressively lowered as the target date nears. This is referred to as a glide path. A significant consideration is the risk associated with the sequence of returns. Two portfolios exhibiting identical average returns can produce dissimilar results if the initial years of retirement coincide with periods of market decline. To counteract this, it is advisable to maintain a liquidity buffer sufficient for 2 to 3 years of expenditures, adopt a flexible withdrawal strategy, reducing withdrawals during unfavorable years and increasing them during favorable ones, and consider annuities and pensions when their terms are clear and their issuers are dependable. It is essential to adjust expenditures for inflation, as the composition of one's spending changes and the costs of items like medication and utilities may increase at a different rate than travel expenses. Retirement encompasses not only financial aspects, but also the organization of one's time. The more defined the daily plan and income sources are, the more robust the budget will be. Fact 17. Property is frequently viewed as a stable investment. Yet its actual return stems not merely from price increases, as might be suggested, but from net cash flow, which encompasses all unapparent costs. These costs include taxes, insurance, maintenance, vacancies, brokerage fees, relocation expenses, and interest on loans. Each of these elements diminishes the real yield and necessitates a liquid reserve. A residence for personal use is a consumer benefit with an emotional dimension. An investment property is a financial undertaking where the capitalization rate, return on investment, and exit scenarios are paramount. Its liquidity is less than that of financial instruments, as property deals can take months to finalize and are subject to market fluctuations. The choice between renting and purchasing is not a matter of ideology, but a calculation of capital's alternative cost and personal mobility. At times, renting proves more economical and adaptable, allowing the saved funds to be allocated to diversified investments. Property markets are diverse. Nationwide averages mask variations within neighborhoods and even on adjacent streets, where conditions can differ significantly. 18th fact. The most significant asset for the majority of individuals is not their investment portfolio, but rather their human capital, which encompasses skills, reputation, health, the capacity for learning, and the ability to monetize their competencies. The income generated from this capital is a flow that can be expanded. This is achieved through training tailored to specific needs, obtaining certifications, learning languages, negotiating compensation, and compiling evidence of one's value, such as achievements, metrics, and case studies. The returns on investments made in developing skills frequently surpass market rates. A single effective skill enhancement can lead to a higher salary for many years. Diversifying income streams is also feasible. In addition to a primary job, one can engage in project work, earn royalties, hold equity in ventures, or develop original products, all while ensuring that health and the main income source remain unaffected. A network of professional connections serves as a multiplier. New opportunities often emerge through less direct contacts, provided these relationships are nurtured organically and without excessive solicitation. Additionally, professional risk management entails building up reserves, securing disability insurance, undergoing regular health screenings, and implementing strategies to prevent burnout, as any disruption to one's physical capacity directly impacts the continuity of financial income. Fact 19 highlights that strategies for getting out of debt are more effective when they blend mathematics with psychology. The avalanche approach involves allocating surplus funds to the debt with the highest effective interest rate, thereby reducing the total amount paid. The snowball method focuses on clearing the smallest debts first, which rapidly builds a feeling of accomplishment and releases funds for subsequent payments. Both approaches necessitate a base, establishing fixed minimum payments across all liabilities, and maintaining a buffer for minor unforeseen expenses to prevent a new penalty from negating all progress. Engaging in discussions with lenders is advantageous, including debt restructuring, interest rate adjustments, or payment date extensions. Conversely, one should be wary of miracle consolidations with unclear conditions and microfinance institutions that conceal fees. Refinancing mortgages and auto loans is sensible when it offers evident savings on the overall cost and involves manageable timelines. The overarching principle is to cease incurring new debts until existing ones are fully settled. Without this, no strategy can effectively fill a bucket with a hole. Fact 20. A family's financial security relies on documents as much as on money. Having a will, directives for bank accounts and beneficiaries, powers of attorney for incapacitation, and instructions for digital assets and passwords helps eliminate legal uncertainty and speeds up access to funds during challenging periods. Life insurance addresses the risk of a primary earner's early death. Covering a few years of family expenses and significant debts is advisable. An overly large insurance sum means paying extra for peace of mind, while an insufficient one represents a misguided saving. It is crucial to store all related documents together: copies of insurance policies, a list of all accounts, contact details for financial advisors, and a detailed action plan for unforeseen circumstances. Parents should arrange for guardianship in the event of simultaneous loss, and entrepreneurs should ensure legal access for partners to operational accounts. An annual review of these documents ensures that asset amounts and composition align with the current life situation. The birth of a child, an increase in income, or a change of residence all necessitate updating the paperwork. Fact 21. The full cost of owning something is nearly always greater than the price shown on the shelf. Take a car as a prime example. Beyond the purchase price and loan, you'll encounter required and optional insurance, taxes, and inspections. Parking, tires and their seasonal changes, scheduled maintenance, unexpected repairs, fines, resale value decrease, and even the time you invest in all these activities are also factors. The most significant hidden expense is depreciation. New vehicles depreciate most rapidly in their initial years, a cost that can exceed fuel expenses. For electronic devices, software subscriptions, accessories, screen repairs, and quick technological obsolescence add to the initial cost. For property, consider utility bills, furnishings, insurance, security deposits, fees, and costs associated with periods of vacancy during relocations. A wise strategy involves estimating costs over the entire usage period: how many miles, hours, or years you'll truly utilize the purchase, and the cost per unit of use. Consequently, what appears inexpensive can prove costly, and renting might be a more practical choice than purchasing. Fact 22. Opportunity cost is the unseen price of every choice. When you select A, you inherently give up B and its advantages. Keeping a substantial amount of cash might appear secure, but the price is foregone compound interest and the blow of inflation. The ongoing discussion about whether to pay off a mortgage or invest is settled by comparing post-tax results and factoring in risk. The guaranteed savings from a high-interest debt is a risk-free yield that the market finds difficult to reliably outperform. With inexpensive loans, the reasoning is more aligned, and factors like liquidity, funds and assets are available, not kept at home, and psychology, the value of being debt-free, are incorporated. The table of starting data should contain the interest rate, time frames, a reserve for unforeseen events, and consistency of contributions. The overarching conclusion is simple and strong. Address the most costly debts first, then decide on the balance between faster repayment of cheaper debts and investing in a diversified investment portfolio. Fact 23. Your credit history acts as a numerical representation of your financial reputation, influencing your eligibility for loans, the interest rates you receive, and occasionally even the terms for renting property or obtaining insurance. The core components that build this history are consistent across various nations. These include making payments on time, managing your credit utilization ratio, lower is better, with ideal figures typically below 30% and even more favorable below 10%, the duration of your credit accounts, older accounts are highly beneficial, the variety of credit products you use, and the frequency of recent credit applications. Closing an older credit card account can unexpectedly reduce the average age of your outstanding debts, negatively impacting your overall credit profile. Conversely, significantly increasing your credit limits shortly before applying for a substantial loan might be viewed as a sign of financial instability. It is advisable to obtain your credit report annually, if this service is available, carefully review it for any inaccuracies, and formally dispute them with supporting documentation. If you have no prior credit history, you can begin one by responsibly using a small credit card and ensuring the full balance is paid automatically each month. The overarching principle applicable to all credit scoring systems is that consistent financial discipline and predictable behavior are far more advantageous than any shortcuts. Even a minor payment delay of a few days can necessitate months of effort to rectify your credit standing. Fact 24th. Subscriptions are emerging as the new recurring payment, insidiously expanding from numerous inexpensive services. Auto-renewing trials, annual plans over monthly ones, complicated cancellation processes, bundled deals with unused discounts, these are standard tactics in the attention economy. To stop money from draining away, maintain a subscription log detailing cost, billing date, and card owner. Schedule notifications 3 to 5 days before renewal. Employ a separate virtual card with a modest limit and immediate alerts. Review your statements weekly and perform a quarterly purge. Disable services you no longer utilize. When altering your plan, retain screenshots of the conditions. If prices rise, explore other options rather than continuing payment out of habit. While the latte effect theory might exaggerate the impact of minor expenses, recurring subscriptions are substantial. They represent a predictable financial flow that either benefits you or boosts another company's income. The 25th fact highlights financial upbringing for children starts not at school, but at home, in the kitchen, through transparent family money rules. Pocket money serves as a tool, not a bribe. A set amount issued regularly teaches planning more effectively than the approach of asking when needed. The system of 3 piggy banks is effective. To spend, to save, to share, this develops a sense of priority and empathy. A family bank with a fair interest rate on long-term goals practically shows the power of compound interest. Payment for individual projects, as opposed to basic responsibilities, clarifies the connection between value and compensation. A teenager's card with spending limits and push notifications makes expenses visible and secure. Jointly analyze receipts, in-game subscriptions, donations to streamers, and compare prices and discounts. Safety is a distinct lesson. Do not share codes. Learn to differentiate advertising from advice and recognize schemes and phishing. This approach cultivates not wealthy children, but adults for whom money is a tool, not their master. Fact 26th. An inconsistent income doesn't have to be a budget disaster if you first average your cash flow. The fundamental approach is to establish a minimum monthly salary transfer for yourself, and then align your spending with it. Any income exceeding this minimum should be placed into a buffer. This buffer should be equivalent to at least 3 to 6 months of your average income, and must be stored separately from your emergency fund. The buffer is for managing income fluctuations, while the emergency fund is for unexpected major issues. Taxes should be automatically allocated every time you receive payment using a fixed percentage as per your country's regulations to prevent a heavy quarterly tax burden. Prior to starting work, agree on terms with clients. Upfront payments, payment deadlines such as net 15/30, penalties for late payments, and acceptance standards. Invoices should be issued promptly after each project stage is finished, and payment reminders should be automated. Having a financial safety net along with liability and health insurance minimizes risks, especially when a significant client delays payment. Indeed, a sales calendar functions as your budget, but focused on future periods. Fact number 27. Financial scams seldom present as obvious fakes. Typically, they offer deals that seem too good to be true. Warning signs are promises of high returns with no risk, references to secret arbitrage windows, payments sourced from new members, and aggressive pressure to act fast. Also consider fake expertise shown through forged licenses and testimonials, phone number spoofing, deepfake audio of bank managers, and directing users to messaging apps instead of official customer service. Within investments, beware of exclusive clubs lacking clear reports and custodians, funds that haven't been audited, and schemes where you hand over money for someone else to trade. Financial influencers must clearly mark advertisements and state any conflicts of interest. Failing to do so warrants suspicion. Always check company registrations with the relevant authority. Don't send large amounts via P2P to unknown individuals. Spread out your risks and store essential assets with reputable providers rather than in unusual applications. Keep in mind that a legitimate financial offering will always be explained straightforwardly. The 28th fact: a salary offer should be reviewed as a financial document. It's crucial to consider not just the monthly amount, but also the entire package. Differentiate between gross and net pay, fixed versus variable components, and one-time bonuses for joining versus annual performance bonuses. Stock options have different structures. Options require paying a strike price and are tied to fair value, whereas restricted stock units, RSUs, do not require a strike but vest over time according to a schedule, often including an initial waiting period known as a cliff. Also, note the differences in taxes and liquidity. Ascertain the vesting period, whether there is acceleration of vesting if the company is sold, and the company's policy for buying back shares if you leave. Compare insurance plans, extra payments for holidays and sick days, matching contributions for retirement savings, reimbursement for remote work and internet expenses, assistance with relocation and visas, and severance packages for redundancy. Clarify the length of the probation period, non-compete clauses, and your rights regarding side projects. Evaluate all these aspects over a 3 to 4 year time frame. Simulate various scenarios for stock value after taxes and compare them with other opportunities. Figures are what matter. Emotions merely add a decorative touch. Fact 29th. Crypto assets represent a highly volatile asset class where both financial and digital hygiene are equally crucial. The principle, "not your keys, not your coins," relates to storage. While exchanges are convenient for trading, it is more sensible to store substantial amounts in your own wallet, keeping the seed phrase offline and in several copies. Hot wallets offer convenience, whereas cold wallets provide greater security. Always double-check any QR code and smart contract, as transaction irreversibility allows no room for mistakes. Stablecoins differ. Some are supported by reserves and have official reporting, while others rely on algorithms and may fail. It is important to research the issuer's risk. Network fees and congestion impact the cost and duration of transfers. Portfolio allocations should be set moderately, with the mindset of how much you are willing to lose, given the significant regulatory and technological risks. Taxation of operations varies by country and is often surprising. It is essential to document transactions and retain statements. In this domain, discipline is more valuable than hype. Fact 30. There is no contradiction between charity and personal finance. Regular donations benefit society and strengthen your financial discipline. An effective approach involves selecting a specific percentage of income or a fixed sum for regular contributions, rather than sporadic ones. This simplifies planning for both charitable foundations and yourself. It is important to verify the transparency of organizations by examining their reports, objectives, impact metrics, and independent audits. High popularity does not always equate to high effectiveness. Employers often provide matching programs which double the impact of your donations without extra expense. In several countries, donations offer tax advantages. Retain your receipts and familiarize yourself with the relevant regulations. Ambitious charitable objectives can be planned ahead of time. Wills and account instructions can incorporate a charitable component. And, during one's lifetime, there are fund equivalents that offer capital management and specific payouts. The key is a conscious approach. Contribute to causes that align with your values and where the outcomes are clear, without jeopardizing your family's fundamental security. Fact 31. Personal finances are controllable when you keep a dual record of your financial life, a statement of money movement, and a net worth balance. Every month, document all income and expenses, using 8 to 12 categories rather than 100: housing, food, transport, communication, medical, education, leisure, and other. Separately, create a table of assets and liabilities: bank accounts, cash, investments, property, and appliances, valued realistically, less any credit or installment debts. These two reports yield key metrics: the savings ratio, the expense coverage period in months, the proportion of debt payments to income, and liquidity. Designate a money day and complete your monthly financial closing at once, checking statements and receipts. This builds discipline. Keep all important papers and guarantees together and scan or photograph receipts for cloud storage. This financial speedometer offers no judgment. It illustrates your financial path: when to speed up, when to slow down, and what impedes progress. Fact 32nd. Purchasing an automobile is a sequence of choices where thorough preparation serves as the primary safeguard for your finances. Initially, establish a comprehensive door-to-door budget that encompasses registration and insurance costs, rather than focusing solely on monthly payments, as the latter arrangement favors the seller. Securing pre-approved financing from an independent bank or having the funds for an outright cash purchase establishes a ceiling for your expenditure and diminishes the likelihood of being pressured into costly terms. When acquiring a new vehicle, it is crucial to consider discounts on models from the previous year and to ensure there are no compulsory additional features. For a pre-owned vehicle, key considerations include its maintenance records, verifying the VIN for any encumbrances, assessing its performance during a cold start, conducting tests at various speeds, and having it inspected by an independent technician prior to making a deposit. The contract should be scrutinized diligently, paying close attention to the terms for refunding any advance payment, stipulated penalties, fulfillment timelines, and the inventory of equipment detailed in the specifications. Extended warranties and rust-proofing treatments should be evaluated as independent acquisitions, with their costs weighed against the potential risk of mechanical failure. Prior to finalizing the transaction, it is advisable to obtain estimates for insurance and taxes, thereby preventing an initially attractive price from escalating into substantial ownership expenses later on. Fact number 33 states, education is an investment that requires calculation of its profitability rather than guesswork. The cost encompasses not only tuition and accommodation, but also the alternative cost of time, meaning the earnings you might have achieved by working during those years. Income should be viewed not as average graduate salaries, but as your real, incremental income in your specific field and region after taxes, factored by the likelihood of employment. It is beneficial to simulate 3 scenarios: a basic one, an optimistic one, and a conservative one, accounting for the possibility that the program might not yield immediate returns and necessitate internships. To lessen the financial outlay, consider grants, scholarships, employer compensation agreements, stackable certifications, and online courses that address knowledge deficiencies without requiring you to stop working. When taking out student loans, it is crucial to comprehend the total cost and the maximum payment amount relative to your income. A significant indicator is the market signal, the demand for skills, the quality of graduates' portfolios, and feedback from employers. Not all that is prestigious holds equal value. True value is found where acquired competencies translate into financial gain. Fact number 34. Relocating to a different city or country is a financial undertaking, essentially an expedition supported by figures. The comparison should focus on the net income after taxes and common expenditures rather than gross salaries. These common expenditures include housing rent and security deposits, transportation costs, utility and communication bills, food expenses, medical care and insurance premiums, and fees for kindergartens and schools. Provisions are made for dual accommodation during the relocation phase, costs for moving belongings, temporary return tickets, expenses for processing documents and their translations, and commissions charged by banks and service providers. When income and expenses are in different currencies, currency risk arises. This risk can be lessened by spreading savings across various currencies and accounts and by adhering to conversion practices that minimize exchange rate spreads. It is important to review tax rules, double taxation treaties, deadlines for submitting reports, and registration prerequisites. Social capital also translates into financial considerations. Lacking a local credit history can lead to increased deposit requirements and more stringent conditions, which can be offset by providing comprehensive documentation and demonstrating consistent income streams. A numerical plan strips away idealism and enables informed decision-making. 35th fact: small businesses and freelancers operate based on cash flow. Paper profit won't save you if your account is empty. The first rule is financial separation. Use separate accounts, cards, and bookkeeping for your company and personal life to track margins and manage taxes correctly. Pay yourself a fixed salary on a schedule. Allocate the rest to expenses, taxes, and a reserve of 2 to 3 months of business operating costs. Issue invoices to clients with clear work stages, advanced payments, and terms like net 15/30. Automate reminders and track outstanding debts by aging them to avoid missing due dates. Aim to keep fixed costs lean. Rent with flexible terms, lease equipment instead of buying, and subscribe only to essential services. Compare acquiring and payment processing fees across your entire transaction volume, considering rates, refunds, and chargebacks. Liability insurance and basic cyber hygiene protect against infrequent but costly incidents. A business is also a portfolio. The key is not growth speed, but survival during tough times. Fact number 36. A goal savings, also known as a sinking fund, stands in contrast to the impulse of borrowing now and dealing with it later. The concept is straightforward. Significant, predictable expenditures are divided into monthly contributions made well in advance of the due date. These funds are held in a separate account, distinct from daily finances. This method covers expenses like vacations, new technology, insurance deductibles, taxes, gifts, and home repairs, essentially anything not immediate but certain to occur. Unlike an emergency fund, which addresses unexpected events, a goal fund is managed with a clear timeline and anticipated future. The recommended approach is to assign a specific name, amount, and target date to each goal. Schedule automatic transfers for payday, and then manage the remaining funds according to your lifestyle. This creates a powerful psychological impact. The money is designated for a purpose, making it difficult to divert it elsewhere. For short-term objectives, it is advisable to use highly liquid accounts. For medium-term goals, consider low-risk investment tools that offer a modest return to counteract inflation. In this system, discipline serves as a substitute for loan interest, as you're essentially paying yourself rather than a financial institution. The 37th fact states that negotiating prices is not a conflict, but a process aimed at finding mutual benefit. Retailers and service providers often allow for negotiation. This can include seasonal sales on older models, demonstration or showroom items, package deals like buy two, pay for 1.5, or complimentary delivery and setup instead of a direct price reduction. It is advisable to investigate the fair price beforehand by utilizing comparison websites, reading customer feedback, and checking average market rates to avoid being presented with an inflated initial offer. When discussing costs, inquire about the complete expense. What will the final amount be, including registration, insurance, delivery, and any applicable fees? The concept of BATNA, or the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, is beneficial. Possessing a pre-approved loan or a competing offer empowers you to decline the deal if the terms are not improved. A powerful yet subtle tactic is to pause and be prepared to forego the purchase at that moment. In the service industry, pricing is often determined by volume and predictability. A long-term commitment, adaptable timelines, or referrals of new clients serve as concrete reasons to request a discount. Ultimately, respect and well-defined criteria are paramount. Emotional appeals diminish over time, while factual data endures. The 38th fact states that bonds represent a loan you provide to an issuer. In return, you receive coupon payments and the principal back when the bond matures. It is important to note that the reliability of bonds differs. Two primary risks are identified: interest rate risk and credit risk. When market interest rates increase, the prices of existing bonds decrease. The greater a bond's duration, meaning its sensitivity to rate changes, the more its price will fall. Long-term bonds, often considered a safe haven, can experience volatility, which is a standard aspect of market mechanics. Credit risk refers to the likelihood that an issuer might delay or fail to make payments. This risk is evaluated using ratings and the spread relative to the risk-free yield curve, and it is managed through diversification across different issuers and sectors. The return on a bond is determined not by its coupon rate, but by its yield to maturity, which accounts for the purchase price and all future payments. Short-term, dependable bonds serve to cushion fluctuations within a portfolio. Longer-term bonds offer higher yields but are more volatile. High-yield bonds suggest an additional reward for taking on risk, which may indeed occur. Your selection of bonds should align with your goals: establishing a liquid reserve, providing stability to your portfolio, or speculating on changes in interest rates. The 39th fact highlights that travel impacts your finances not just through prices, but also via payment regulations. Payment terminals frequently suggest transactions in your home currency, a practice known as dynamic currency conversion, which typically includes an undisclosed surcharge. Opting for payment in the local currency is generally a more secure approach. Overseas ATMs often push recommended exchange rates. It is advisable to decline these offers and allow your bank to handle the currency conversion based on its own terms. Withdrawing cash using credit cards may forfeit your grace period and result in additional fees. Therefore, it is preferable to use a debit card equipped with sensible spending limits, transaction alerts, and a secondary card kept in a separate location. When making reservations or renting vehicles, be aware that deposits are often held. Factor in your available balance and the time required for these funds to be released. Data roaming also represents a financial consideration. Subscribe to data packages beforehand to prevent per-usage charges. Medical insurance with defined coverage limits while abroad can prevent substantial expenses in the event of an incident. Lastly, a straightforward checklist includes copies of your documents, your bank's contact details, offline maps, and a small amount of local currency. The 40th fact highlights that money in relationships is about the architecture of trust, not simply about whether finances are shared or separate. Three primary models exist: a fully shared budget, entirely separate finances, and a hybrid approach with three categories. In the hybrid system, a predetermined percentage of funds is allocated for shared objectives, while individual spending requires no accounting. Transparency is paramount. This includes a clear list of accounts and debts, established goals, insurance coverage, and a contingency plan. Establishing rules for financial discussions is crucial. These conversations should occur during calm periods, free from blame, grounded in current figures and future aspirations rather than past errors. A monthly family meeting is recommended to review the budget, track progress toward goals, discuss significant purchases, and make necessary adjustments. The division of responsibilities does not grant one partner authority. The individual managing the accounts is not the sole financial controller, as decisions are made collaboratively. Warning signs such as undisclosed debts, restricted access to funds, or pressure to take out loans indicate financial control, necessitating clear boundaries and potential assistance. Well-managed finances within a partnership expand freedom rather than limiting it. Fact 41. Dividends are not gifted money, but one way capital is returned to shareholders. This return only alters the overall financial picture when considered alongside the stock's price. On the day a stock goes ex-dividend, its price typically drops by roughly the dividend amount, taking into account taxes, market sentiment, and news. This happens because the company has less cash by that amount, while the shareholder receives cash. The total value, however, does not increase. A high dividend yield can often signal problems. The yield rises because the stock price has fallen due to anticipated difficulties, creating a dividend trap. Companies known as dividend aristocrats are managed with discipline, but this doesn't guarantee superior returns. More crucial is the total return, which combines price appreciation and reinvested dividends, DRIP. The strategies of living on dividends and selling some shares are economically alike, carrying similar risks and tax implications. The distinctions are psychological and fiscal. Share buybacks offer an alternative to dividend payments, but their effectiveness hinges on the company's valuation. Buying back shares at a high price destroys value. Fact 42. Leasing, credit, and renting are three ways to use an asset, each with varying flexibility. Credit means buying on an installment plan. You pay interest but gain ownership, taking on the risks of reselling and depreciation. Leasing is an agreement for a specific period with a calculated residual value. Monthly payments are typically lower and the initial deposit might be less, but it comes with mileage/wear limits, fees for early termination, and a purchase option at a set price. This is practical if you intend to replace your vehicle or equipment every 2 to 4 years and appreciate predictable expenses. Renting offers the most flexibility, allowing use without ownership or resale concerns, but at the highest price per time period. When calculating the total cost of ownership, all payments, insurance, operational limits, taxes, and charges for exceeding these limits are considered. For businesses, there are also accounting and tax considerations. Operational leasing can sometimes improve a company's balance sheet and cash flow. The decision hinges on your time frame, how you'll use the asset, and your readiness to manage the risk associated with its residual value. Fact number 43. Concentrating your capital within your employer company creates a dual risk. Your earnings and your assets are tied to one origin. If the company faces a downturn, you could lose your job and simultaneously see stock values decline or bonuses disappear, a double blow. Despite appealing discounts in co-purchase plans, generous RSU or options, and brand allegiance that might push you to hold company shares, emotional responses should yield to discipline. It's advisable to set a prudent ceiling for your employer's stock in your net worth at 5 to 10%, occasionally up to 15% for established large corporations. The remainder should be diversified systematically. A practical approach involves automatically selling some stock when it vests and moving the funds into an index fund. Be mindful of blackout periods before financial reports and maintain reserves in accounts independent of your employer's bank. With ESPP, leverage the discount as a free lunch but exit the position when appropriate. A contingency plan for scenarios like layoffs and stock price depreciation is as crucial as your resume. The 44th fact. Rebalancing means regularly bringing your portfolio back to its intended risk proportions. This prevents you from being overly influenced by lucky breaks or bad losses. You can rebalance on a schedule, like every quarter, half year, or year. Alternatively, you can rebalance when an asset class's share deviates from its target by a certain amount, for instance, 5 percentage points above or below. Many people combine these. They check their portfolio on a schedule, but only make changes if an asset class has gone outside its set limits. For accounts where you pay taxes, you first try gentle rebalancing by adding money or directing dividends to reduce the need to sell assets. Selling assets is a last resort, and you need to account for trading fees. A special technique is tax loss harvesting. This involves selling an asset that has lost value and then buying a very similar asset but not an exact copy to follow rules about buying substantially identical things. The exact rules vary by country. It's easier in tax-advantaged accounts because taxes don't get in the way of sticking to your plan. The main objective is always the same: to manage risk and consistently sell when things are expensive and buy when they are cheap. The 45th fact states that gold is not a driver of wealth, but rather a safeguard against specific situations. It generates no income, meaning its long-term performance is tied to market moods, actual interest rates, and currency power. Sometimes the metal acts as a defense against inflation and financial strain, and other times its value stays put for years. Ways to hold it differ. Physical bullion and coins need safekeeping and involve a price difference when bought or sold. Coins meant for collections often have an extra charge for their numismatic value separate from the metals market price. Gold ETFs are handy and easily traded, but come with management charges. Paper gold that isn't physically delivered carries the risk of the other party defaulting. A typical share in an investment portfolio is modest, from 5 to 10%, functioning as a protective hedge and a way to spread risk. It sometimes increases in value when the stock market declines. It's crucial to grasp its function. Gold cannot substitute for an emergency fund. It's not designed to beat market returns, and it needs the same approach to tracking expenses and adjusting the portfolio. Fact 46. Inflation-protected bonds are instruments that can be described as a standard bond structure enhanced with index-linked protection. The nominal value of these securities is periodically updated according to the official price index with a specific time delay. Coupon payments are calculated based on the adjusted nominal value, enabling investors to earn a yield that surpasses inflation. When inflation increases, the indexed face value and payouts track this rise. Conversely, if inflation decreases, the protective effect diminishes, and in periods of deflation, indexing might lead to a reduction in the face value, depending on the specific terms of the issuance. Investors face risks, including reliance on the index calculation method, as the consumer basket may not align with individual spending patterns, taxation of indexed gains prior to actual redemption in certain tax systems, and susceptibility to changes in real interest rates. An increase in rates causes a decline in the prices of these bonds. Essentially, they are not a perfect solution, but rather a solid component of a portfolio for long-term objectives where preserving purchasing power is a primary concern. Short-term issuances help smooth out volatility, whereas long-term issuances are more sensitive to interest rate fluctuations. Fact 47th. Dollar cost averaging, DCA, and investing a lump sum both tackle the issue of how to distribute a large amount of money over time. On markets that consistently rise, investing all at once is statistically more likely to be successful because the money is invested for a longer period. However, psychological factors and the fear of investing at a market peak make DCA a more stable choice. DCA involves dividing a large sum into equal, scheduled payments, which lessens the chance of significant regret and encourages disciplined investing. For a single large sum, one approach is to invest a third right away, and then invest the remainder over 6 to 12 months on a set schedule, ignoring market news. DCA naturally applies to regular contributions from salary and functions well as an automated savings plan. A common error is to let averaging turn into waiting indefinitely for the ideal time, causing money to sit idle for years and be eroded by inflation. Regardless of the method chosen, adhering to specific rules is crucial. A preset investment schedule, distributing funds according to goals and asset types, occasional portfolio adjustments, and avoiding attempts to time the market bottom. Fact 48. Return is not a single figure, but a spread of possible results, and functioning within a portfolio means operating inside that spread. Two strategies with the same average can feel drastically different because of volatility, peak losses, and how quickly they bounce back. For long-term objectives, actual figures adjusted for inflation and sequence risk, the pattern of good and bad years, are crucial. For short-term objectives, liquidity and predictability are key. Measures like the Sharpe ratio and Sortino ratio are helpful for comparing risk versus return, but they are not a substitute for good judgment. In times of crisis, correlations rise, and many assets considered independent move in unison. Practical application involves 4 stages: setting your objective and time frame, selecting an asset mix that matches your tolerance for losses, the calm sleep test, figuring out expenses and taxes, and establishing a rebalancing strategy. And keep in mind, a large part of success comes not from choosing the best year, but from resilience and keeping costs low each year. Fact 49. Cashback, miles, and points represent a loyalty discount. This discount is effective only if one strict condition is met. Your card balance must be cleared to 0 each month. If this is not done, interest will negate any advantage. The most effective approach involves a straightforward system. Use 1 or 2 cards for your primary spending categories and 1 general-purpose card offering basic cashback for all other purchases. Using many different cards leads to confusion and increases the likelihood of missing payment deadlines. Welcome bonuses are advantageous when you have planned expenses rather than when you try to increase spending just to qualify. Miles tend to lose value over time, making long-term accumulation an unwise strategy. It is better to use redeemed rewards for actual necessities, such as flights or hotel stays, or to pay off your card balance rather than buying random items at inflated catalog prices. Be mindful of foreign transaction fees, decline dynamic currency conversion, and carefully review loyalty program terms, including any restrictions on dates, partners, or periods when rewards are unavailable. Keep in mind that free cashback is funded by merchant fees, so it is not advisable to spend more than you need solely to earn bonuses. 51st fact. Medical costs are a very common financial shock, and they should be managed proactively with good record-keeping and by resolving questions early on. When selecting an insurance plan or a medical facility, it's important to compare not just the premium or payment, but also the deductible, co-payments, coverage limits, and the provider network. Receiving care outside the network can significantly increase the cost. It is advisable to schedule preventative services like vaccinations, health screenings, and dental care, as these are less expensive than treating resulting health problems. Before undergoing any medical procedure, clarify the service codes and whether pre-authorization is required. After the service, request a detailed bill, as errors in coding and duplicate charges happen frequently and can be corrected. Also, find out the cost for paying with cash, as this rate is sometimes lower than the insurance rate. It is essential to retain all related documents, including EOBs, explanation of benefits, and all correspondence, because disputes over bills have specific time limits. When traveling abroad, insurance that covers emergency situations and medical evacuation is essential. When purchasing medications, compare prices for generic versions and utilize manufacturer discount programs. The primary objective is not to eliminate all spending, but to avoid a severe, unexpected financial crisis that occurs when health issues and financial problems strike at the same time. Fact 51. Bank fees act as a tax on carelessness, quietly diminishing interest earnings and cash back. Beyond subscription fees, accounts and cards may incur charges for infrequent activities: interbank transfers to different banks or regions, cash withdrawals from non-network ATMs, plastic card replacements, printed bank statements, account inactivity, or exceeding transfer limits. Currency conversion is another area to consider. The spread is frequently concealed within seemingly advantageous exchange rates, and weekend rates can diverge from those on weekdays. Service packages advertised as free with a certain turnover are beneficial only while conditions are met. Should your spending decrease, the subscription fee is reinstated, causing the annual cost to increase significantly. Interest on balance might come with a cap on the amount or spending prerequisites. It's crucial to calculate the actual yearly gain rather than relying on banner claims of up to 10%. When making international transfers, it's advisable to assess the entire cost structure: the sender's fee, correspondent bank charges, and the exchange rate. The final figure matters more than an attractive zero rate. A practical approach is to designate banks for specific purposes: one for everyday transactions, another for savings with interest and restricted access, and a third for travel-related use. This strategy helps mitigate risks and expenses. Fact 52nd. Time is your most precious asset, and your personal finances improve when you determine your hourly life cost. A straightforward approach: take your net monthly income and divide it by your real work hours, including travel, extra hours, and the mental load from home. This provides a reference point. Next, make comparisons. If getting groceries delivered saves you 2 hours and costs less than your hourly rate, consider it an investment in your focus and relaxation. Conversely, if DIY consumes your weekend and requires a tool you won't use again, it's a costly DIY endeavor. However, this formula should not override common sense. Certain activities are rewarding through skill acquisition and enjoyment, like cooking for stress relief or fixing things to understand your home better. The crucial aspect is to avoid letting minor penny pinching lead to significant financial losses. Avoid lengthy queues for tiny discounts, extra travel time for cheaper fuel, or constantly comparing rates instead of working. Establish a decision rule: if the hourly savings are below X, I opt for the most convenient choice. And channel the time you save into earning more, improving your health, and nurturing your relationships. Fact 53rd. Unplanned income, like a bonus, a tax rebate, a gift, or selling something that has been gathering dust, can quickly disappear on impulse spending if you don't assign it a purpose beforehand. Simple math with adjustable portions is effective. Allocate some for immediate pleasure, buying something you've wanted for a while and getting that feeling, some for the future, adding to your savings, investing more, or paying off insurance, and some for the past, paying down the debt with the highest interest rate faster. You can adapt these ratios to your life. If you have more debt, increase the past portion. If your emergency fund is low, boost the future allocation. The key is to avoid turning a one-off gain into a regular expense. For instance, starting a new subscription just in case can result in charges for years. If your bonus depends on your performance, you can use part of it for training that improves your chances of earning more bonuses, creating a cycle of positive reinforcement. Also, remember taxes and timing. Certain payments have different tax implications, so put aside a percentage in advance so your happiness doesn't turn into confusion when it's time to report. Fact 54th. Utility savings aren't about wearing a sweater. They're about a single modernization that pays small dividends over years. LED bulbs last significantly longer and use much less power. Smart switches and timers ensure lights are off in empty rooms. Heat often escapes through windows and doors. Seals, adjusting hardware, and basic insulation for attics and pipes are low-cost jobs with fast returns. A thermostat with a schedule lowers heating/cooling when you're out. Washing at moderate temperatures and air-drying clothes cut costs and prolong their lifespan. New energy-efficient appliances cost more initially but less over time. Calculate the TCO. The energy savings over 5 to 7 years often offset the initial price difference. Phantom loads are electronics in standby mode. A power strip with a switch can cut them off overnight. These are not acts of sacrifice, but systematic small improvements that maintain comfort while shielding your budget from increasing utility costs. Fact 55th. Keeping track of errors is an undervalued asset for personal finances. We often recall profitable transactions while overlooking failures, crediting success to our abilities and blaming failures on external conditions. A solution is to maintain a decisions log. Prior to making a significant purchase, investment, or taking on debt, document your assumptions, alternative options, benchmarks for success, and acceptable loss thresholds. Later, revisit these entries to compare the initial plan with the actual results. This retrospective analysis helps identify recurring patterns, for instance, making purchases impulsively in the evening, underestimating the time needed for renovations, overestimating income, or disregarding associated fees. A pre-mortem approach is also beneficial. Envision a decision going wrong and list potential causes. This often highlights areas needing further review or contingency planning. It's advisable to use checklists. For example, for a loan, full cost, penalties, early repayment terms. For an investment, associated costs, taxes, various potential scenarios. For a purchase, total cost of ownership and return policy. Avoid self-blame for the world's inherent unpredictability. The objective is not to eliminate all mistakes, but to reduce their cost and frequency. In situations with significant randomness, focus on evaluating the decision-making process itself rather than solely the outcome. Discipline proves more effective than luck over the long term. Fact 56. Investment expenses encompass not just the apparent broker fees, but also concealed market costs. Even when transactions appear to be free, you incur the bid-ask spread. And during active trading, you experience slippage where the price changes during the execution period. Additional costs include holding fees, exchange and clearing charges, interest on margin loans, currency conversion fees with a spread, and withdrawal fees. For investment funds, these are augmented by total expense ratios or management costs, along with less obvious factors like tracking error against an index, internal fund taxes, and the cost of periodic rebalancing. Some investment structures feature payment for order flow, which can impact the quality of trade execution. Practical strategies to minimize these outflows involve trading less frequently, selecting liquid assets, using limit orders for patient acquisitions, refraining from trading on news with thin order books, and evaluating the complete set of fees rather than focusing on a single appealing metric. The ultimate outcome is important over a multi-year period. Small additional annual percentage points, while individually imperceptible, become substantial due to the power of compounding. Fact number 57. Life insurance can be categorized into pure protection and hybrid products that include savings. A term life insurance policy is simple. You pay a premium, and if you die during the policy term, a substantial amount is paid out. If no claim occurs, no money is returned, but the cost of coverage per unit of amount is low. Products designed for accumulation and universal coverage offer a dual benefit, protection, and a cash value component that increases and can be accessed via loans or by surrendering the policy. However, these types of policies typically involve high commissions in the initial years, feature intricate surrender value schedules, and their internal rate of return is not always clear. Frequently, the actual interest rate is considerably lower than what can be achieved with other investment options. Consequently, the primary objective is to mitigate financial risks. By securing an amount equivalent to several years of a family's living expenses and significant outstanding debts, for a duration extending until children or a partner achieve financial independence. Beneficiaries are named directly within the policy and should be reevaluated when significant life events occur. Sometimes it is beneficial to have several term policies with decreasing coverage amounts to match declining needs. It is generally more practical to manage investments separately, as this simplifies the process of calculation, comparison, and making adjustments without compromising insurance coverage. Fact 58. Factor investing is an effort to systematically earn premiums for persistent market features, value, companies that are inexpensive based on fundamentals, small capitalization, quality profitability, momentum, and others. These premiums are not guaranteed year by year. They arrive in irregular waves, may underperform broad market indexes for decades, and demand unwavering discipline. Failing to maintain discipline means an investor might sell just before a turnaround. The risks associated with these factors are genuine. Companies labeled cheap often have valid reasons for their low valuation. Small companies are more vulnerable, and momentum can easily reverse. Factors are often combined to diversify risk away from a single source. Investors track expenses and deviations from a benchmark, tracking error, and they prepare for the possibility of extended periods of underperformance. The implementation method is crucial. Index funds with a defined strategy, sensible asset selection depth, and consistent rebalancing are preferred. Investment products that are opaque black boxes with high fees and claims of perpetual alpha should be viewed with caution. The objective is not to outsmart the market, but to achieve a different risk profile that occasionally yields rewards. 59th fact. An investment policy acts as a personal constitution, protecting against emotional choices during storms. It outlines the goal and time horizon, target asset allocations, rebalancing bands, deposit and withdrawal rules, a list of allowed instruments, and red lines, prohibited actions. A useful addition is a crisis protocol. If the portfolio falls by X%, new ideas are frozen for 48 hours. Selling based on news headlines is forbidden, and a plan for contributions rebalancing is set by predetermined thresholds. For short-term objectives, the liquidity rule is key, at least N months of expenses held in low-risk instruments. For retirement, a withdrawal strategy and time-segmented buckets. Operational details are also documented. How to keep passwords and access secure, the location of user accounts, and who implements the plan during force majeure events. The policy is reviewed once a year, irrespective of market fluctuations. Changes are made only if personal life changes, not emotional states. An IPS doesn't render a portfolio unsinkable, but it drastically lowers the price of panic. The 60th fact. ESG and responsible investing focus on matching capital with values rather than on achieving magical yields. Several methods exist: excluding certain industries, selecting companies that are best in class according to sustainability rankings, actively holding shares and engaging in dialogue with management, and undertaking direct impact projects with quantifiable social or environmental outcomes. The methodologies used for ratings vary, leading to discrepancies in their results. The phenomenon of greenwashing is present when marketing claims exceed actual facts. The use of filters can lead to adverse consequences: imbalances in the portfolio's sector allocation, a rise in tracking error, and, in some instances, increased commissions. Evaluation should be based on concrete data, not on slogans. This includes emissions per unit of revenue, workplace safety records, the independence of board members, and the degree of reporting transparency. An investor's preferences are valid, but their associated cost needs to be calculated. How expected returns, risk levels, and expenditures are affected. Consequently, ESG transforms into a deliberate choice, aligned with investment policy and objectives rather than a casual fad within a portfolio. Fact 61. Financial health is conveniently viewed not as rich or not rich, but as a control panel with several steady indicators. First is the savings ratio, the share of income turned into capital. The more stable you keep this benchmark, the more predictable your path. Second is the debt burden, total mandatory payments against net income. Experience indicates that living is more comfortable when this share is moderate and doesn't consume budget flexibility. Third is liquidity. How many months of essential expenses a quickly accessible reserve covers? This provides time and safeguards against poor choices. Fourth is net worth, assets minus liabilities, and its quarterly changes. Fifth are costs. Commissions and spreads can easily cause the loss of compound growth percentages. Sixth is risk concentration, the share of one employer, one market, or one currency. All these numbers are for navigation, not perfectionism. By observing the gauges, you spot a tilt sooner and correct your heading. Fact 62nd. Bank deposits and investment accounts are governed by different protection rules. In numerous nations, deposits made by individuals are insured by governmental or industry schemes up to a specified ceiling for each bank and customer. The aim of this protection is to preserve the initial deposit amount, not to guarantee returns, in case the bank encounters financial difficulties. Conversely, investments are not covered against market volatility. A decline in stock prices represents your risk. Nevertheless, risks related to the financial infrastructure are mitigated through asset segregation held by the broker and custodian, a prohibition on the broker using your securities for their own transactions without your explicit permission, and through regulatory oversight. Margin accounts permit the transfer and subsequent offering of securities. This particular aspect warrants careful examination. It is prudent to diversify not only your assets, but also the financial institutions you engage with. Maintain reserves and investment portfolios across various service providers. Verify their operating licenses and review their financial statements. And ensure that statements and contracts are kept in an offline format. Always keep in mind that an account advertised as safe with an unusually high interest rate or a miracle broker lacking a clear legal jurisdiction should be treated as a warning sign, regardless of how polished their platform may appear. Fact 63rd. Mortgages are a lengthy process where savings accumulate from minor elements. Annuity payments are uniform and practical, yet at the outset they are predominantly composed of interest. Differentiated payments are higher initially and result in lower total interest costs over the loan's duration. Prepaying the mortgage is most beneficial during the first half of the term, provided no penalties apply. An accelerated payment schedule, made every 2 weeks, effectively adds a 13th payment annually, thereby decreasing the overall interest paid. Refinancing involves a break-even point. To find it, divide all the transaction's upfront expenses by the anticipated monthly savings, then compare this to your actual expected duration of using the new loan. A small initial payment frequently necessitates loan insurance, which is an additional component of the total cost of ownership. A fixed interest rate ensures payment predictability, while a variable rate makes payments sensitive to market fluctuations. Hybrid mortgage products demand careful review of the periods during which the rate is fixed. Crucially, calculations should be comprehensive, covering everything from initial setup to taxes, insurance, registration fees, and the family's real-life circumstances. The 64th fact highlights that financial support for elderly parents must be proactive, starting before any issues arise. It is essential to maintain a transparent record of all accounts, recurring payments, and medical contacts. Electronic access with varying levels of authorization is crucial, as are legally valid powers of attorney for financial and medical decisions in your country. A clear guideline for situations where a phone is unreachable should also be prepared. Setting card limits and notification preferences is advisable. Consider establishing a separate account for daily living expenses with a modest balance, while larger amounts should be held in a less accessible, slow account without a card. A discussion about fraud prevention is imperative, emphasizing the importance of not sharing codes, not making payments over the phone, verifying callers by contacting the bank directly using the number on the card, and not admitting individuals claiming to be service personnel without a prior appointment. It is important to investigate available benefits, subsidies, medication discount programs, and social support services, as these represent tangible financial assistance. When planning for caregiving costs, evaluate different choices such as hiring a domestic helper, utilizing daycare facilities, opting for residential care homes, or arranging paid assistance from family members. Always enter into written agreements that specify the services provided and their schedule, and diligently maintain records. Establishing predictability and having proper documentation helps to minimize potential disorder. Fact 65th. The latter approach for deposits and bonds serves as a strategy to manage interest rate risk and liquidity, eliminating the need to predict rate movements. Rather than investing a single lump sum into one long-term instrument, the total amount is divided into equal portions with staggered maturity dates, for instance, maturing each year over a 1 to 5 year period. When the nearest portion matures, if interest rates have increased, you can reinvest that sum for a new, longer term at a higher interest rate. Conversely, if rates have decreased, the returns from the remaining longer-term portions, which were secured at an earlier time, provide stability. This method allows you to have money accessible in the near future without locking up all your funds for an extended duration, and it prevents your entire investment from being dependent on a single interest rate. To meet a specific financial objective, such as funding children's education or home renovations, the latter can be structured to align with a particular target date. It is crucial to consider details like fees and taxes, early withdrawal terms for deposits, and the credit quality and duration of bonds. While a ladder strategy does not guarantee the highest possible return at any given moment, it provides significant control, a predictable schedule of cash inflows, and robustness against unexpected changes in the interest rate cycle. The 66th fact: an anti-crisis approach to personal finances isn't panic, it's a priority payment and liquidity checklist. First, secure the four walls: your home, essential food, utilities, and transportation to work. Everything else is temporarily reduced to the bare minimum. Second, immediately take stock of all your debts. This means listing creditors, due dates, interest rates, and any penalties. For each debt, contact the creditor beforehand to discuss deferrals, restructuring, or payment holidays, as agreed terms are more cost-effective than late fees. Third, implement a growth freeze. This involves pausing non-essential subscriptions and projects, reevaluating your spending habits, and using cash envelopes for variable expenses to regain financial awareness. Fourth, build a small emergency fund for 1 to 2 months, even if it means temporarily lowering investment contributions. The objective is to stop using credit cards to cover immediate needs. Fifth, boost your income streams. This includes taking on side jobs, securing advance payments for completed work stages, receiving prepayments, and selling items you no longer use. Crucially, avoid expensive short-term loans. A brief respite from these often leads to a debt trap. Fact 67th. Purchasing pre-owned goods is not a gamble when considering depreciation and associated risks. Certain product categories make buying on the secondary market a rational choice. These include vehicles that are 2 to 4 years old, past their warranty period, but with a documented service history. Also included are refurbished gadgets from the manufacturer, equipped with a new battery and a year's warranty. Solid wood furniture, sports equipment free of concealed flaws, children's apparel, and baby strollers are also sensible second-hand purchases. However, there are product types where economizing is inadvisable. These are motorcycle helmets, child car seats with an unknown usage history, mountaineering equipment, gas and high-voltage apparatus, as well as mattresses and cosmetic products. When buying electronics, it's essential to check the serial number or IMEI for any locks, perform tests on the battery and screens, inspect for signs of being dropped, ensure all components are present, and confirm a return window of 7 to 14 days. For automobiles, one should obtain VIN reports, verify paint thickness, conduct a cold start test, check mileage against service records, and arrange for independent diagnostics before making a down payment. It's important to factor in the total cost of ownership, TCO, encompassing delivery expenses, cleaning, consumables, potential repairs, and the absence of a warranty. Payments should be processed via secure platforms or escrow services. The exchange of goods should occur in a public location, and the contract must contain the parties' passport information and a detailed account of the item's condition. Fact 68. Cash and cashless methods are not rivals but instruments with distinct characteristics. A card provides chargeback security, simplifies expense tracking, and offers cashback. Yet, it can lead to less considered spending and is dependent on infrastructure like working payment terminals, ATM availability, and anti-fraud system approvals. Cash is more reliable offline, aids in budget control when used directly, and is practical for markets or tipping. However, it can be lost easily and is difficult to monitor. Risks include counterfeit money and theft. A smart approach involves a combination. For daily shopping, use a card with active notifications and a low spending limit. For work trips or vacations, opt for a separate card with no foreign transaction fees and a backup option. A small sum of cash in small denominations serves as an emergency fund. Your main savings should be in a secure, easily accessible account, not hidden at home. At home, keep only enough cash for 1 or 2 days for unexpected needs. When traveling, avoid dynamic currency conversion and use ATMs located at banks, refusing their suggested exchange rates. Security is also a key practice. Carry your wallet in a front pocket or inside your bag. Cover the keypad when entering your PIN and retain your receipts. Fact number 69. Practicing financial information hygiene conserves both your funds and your peace of mind. The market produces a constant stream of noise, while valuable signals develop gradually. Monitoring too often can lead to decisions lacking statistical basis. A recommended practice is to establish an update frequency. For instance, review news daily from 2 trustworthy sources, check your portfolio monthly, and revisit your strategy annually. Give preference to original sources. Company reports, official statements from regulators, and statistical data are more valuable than second-hand accounts on social media. It is important to differentiate between facts, opinions, and predictions. When analyzing charts, request information on axes and the basis for comparison. For sensational news, inquire about the publication date and the methodology used. Develop the ability to defer impulsive decisions. Implement a 24 to 48-hour waiting period before executing a significant trade. Utilize a Why Now checklist and consult your investment policy. Configure alert subscriptions based on risk or rebalancing thresholds rather than every minor price movement. It is crucial to acknowledge limitations. Even recognized experts frequently err. A systematic approach to the investment process, encompassing discipline, cost management, and diversification, proves more effective than trying to predict market trends based on headlines. Fact 70. Capital in closets means money that is currently unavailable but can be accessed by selling things you don't need. Begin by listing items room by room and by type: electronics, clothes, sports gear, tools. Evaluate how easily they can be sold. Consider the brand, their current state, and if they are in season. For items that are harder to sell individually, it's better to group them together to save time and make shipping easier. Set prices based on what similar items have actually sold for, not just what you want for them. Remember to include a price reduction because there's no warranty. When taking photos, ensure good lighting, show close-ups of any flaws, and write a truthful description. Get your packaging ready beforehand: boxes, protective film, and choose a shipping method that offers tracking. Erase data safely. For computers, this means full encryption and reinstalling the system. For phones, unlink accounts and IME, perform a factory reset, and delete the eSIM. Arrange to meet buyers in busy locations or at designated pickup points, and never accept payments sent directly to your card. For larger items, use a secure deposit box or an escrow service. If you don't have time to sell, donating items to charities and getting a receipt can offer tax advantages in certain regions. As an extra benefit, owning fewer things reduces the cost of storing them and moving them. Fact 71. Personal finances are often weakened by unnoticed cognitive biases, with sunk costs being a prominent example. This occurs when money and time already spent cannot be recovered, yet it encourages further investment. For instance, if a renovation project is delayed and its cost doubles, the inclination is to invest more as so much is already committed. However, a rational approach necessitates comparing only the future costs and benefits of different options, finishing the renovation, hiring a new contractor, pausing the work, or selling the property in its current state. Additionally, the endowment effect plays a role, making owned items seem more valuable than their market price, leading to the retention of disadvantageous assets or possessions for contingency. Coupled with the inertia of the status quo, these factors result in rigid decision-making. Practical countermeasures include the look-forward principle, disregarding past expenditures, implementing a stop-loss order for projects, a predetermined loss limit triggering a mandatory reassessment, conducting a pre-mortem analysis, asking why might this fail, and obtaining an objective assessment of financial data from an emotionally detached individual. Recognizing mistakes earlier significantly reduces their financial and psychological toll. Fact 72nd. Negotiating salary is a data-driven project with a timeline, not merely asking for more. Preparation starts with market benchmarks. Consider your role, grade, region, and the median salary range to set your anchor, not the employer's. The next step involves the total compensation package. This includes your salary, bonuses, RSU/options with their vesting periods, signing bonuses, allowances for remote work or relocation, training, health benefits, paid time off, and severance. It's important to note that different parts of the package can be swapped. The third step is to present evidence of your value. Compile a list of accomplishments with before and after metrics, highlight projects, cost savings, and any new duties you've taken on. Keep this concise on a single page. The right timing is key, either before the budget cycle begins or after a successful quarter. Use precise language. Based on market data and my performance, I request a salary adjustment to / a compensation package of. Alternatively, you can say, if the salary range ceiling cannot be adjusted, let's explore a one-time bonus, a promotion, RSU/options, or remote work arrangements. Maintaining composure and having a BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement, ready will improve your odds. Ensure the final agreement is put in writing so that what was agreed upon remains clear. Fact 73rd. When selecting an insurance franchise, it's about finding a balance between a lower monthly payment and the level of risk you are prepared to accept. A higher franchise noticeably lowers the premium, but it necessitates having readily available cash as you'll be responsible for the initial portion of costs if an incident occurs. Should accidents or breakdowns be infrequent, the money saved on premiums over time will compensate for the rare instances of paying out of pocket. Conversely, if the risks are greater, such as for a new driver, frequent travel, or in areas susceptible to natural phenomena, a disproportionately high franchise can be hazardous. It is advisable to calculate the break-even point, determining how many months of premium savings will offset the franchise difference. For auto insurance, focus on coverage for glass, towing services, and loaner vehicles. For home insurance, consider issues like flood/fires, neighbor liability, and utility wear. The market offers usage-based policies where cautious driving reduces the cost, but ensure you only provide the provider with data you deem acceptable. Always retain photographs of your belongings and their purchase receipts, as documentation, not emotions, prevails in payout disputes. Fact 74th. Renovating a home is among the most undervalued financial transactions. The estimate nearly always increases if a buffer isn't factored in. The key principle is to allocate an extra 10–20% for unexpected issues and to establish a precisely detailed scope of work, specifying inclusions, materials, delivery responsibilities, timelines, and completion standards. It's advisable to compare a minimum of 3 commercial proposals of similar quality, verifying TIN licenses, liability insurance, portfolios, and customer feedback. The contract should outline a phased schedule and payment based on completed work rather than a 50% deposit for a promise. Any changes must be documented via a written change order detailing cost and time frame. Preserve all communication records and photographic evidence, and implement a 5 to 10% retention until any identified issues are resolved. Renting tools is generally more cost-effective than purchasing them for a single task. And when selecting materials, consider the total cost of ownership. Inexpensive flooring that warps within a year will ultimately prove more expensive. In some instances, it can be more practical to rent alternative accommodation temporarily during renovations, rather than prolonging the work by doing it in the evenings, as time itself has value. The 75th fact states that taxes on investments differ from country to country, yet the fundamental principles tend to be consistent. Income types include interest, dividends, and capital appreciation. Transactions held for shorter periods usually face higher tax rates compared to those held for longer durations. Maintaining records of lots is crucial. Noting the purchase date and price is necessary for accurate base calculation during partial sales. The chosen identification method, whether FIFO, first in, first out, or specific identification, will influence the final tax calculation. The strategy of tax moss harvesting permits offsetting losses against profits, thereby lowering the taxable base. However, it's essential to adhere to regulations prohibiting wash sales, which involve selling an asset and immediately repurchasing it in the same position. Asset location strategies can lead to savings. Assets generating high current income are best kept in tax-advantaged accounts, while those that are more tax-efficient should reside in standard accounts. For international securities, there might be withholding taxes at the source and agreements in place to prevent double taxation. It is advisable to retain all statements, transaction confirmations, and a reporting calendar, as the cost of penalties often exceeds any potential savings. While specific details should be confirmed with your country's legislation, the principle of disciplined record-keeping remains universally applicable. Fact 76th. When selecting an ETF, focus not on the name or a visually appealing chart, but on examining its technical passport. Initially, identify the specific index the fund tracks, its selection and weighting methods based on capitalization, free float, equal weighting with liquidity filters, and the frequency of rebalancing. Subsequently, evaluate expenses and actual performance, the published TER and the real tracking difference, which accounts for concealed costs and revenue from lending securities. Liquidity and spread are crucial. Low AUM and a shallow order book lead to greater transaction costs for entering and exiting positions. Market orders are hazardous, so opt for limit orders. The fund's jurisdiction influences dividend taxation and regulations like UCITS or similar. Replication methods can be physical or synthetic, involving swaps and counterparty risk. Whether dividends are credited to your account or reinvested automatically alters tax implications. Also, be aware of deviations from NAV during volatile periods. ETFs generally trade near their fair price, but for narrow themes or markets, the spread can become larger. The 77th point addresses freelance pricing, defining it as a structure where the payment form dictates how parties act. An hourly rate offers clarity but can lead to tasks taking longer. A fixed project fee reduces client worry, but it necessitates a precise project brief and safeguards against scope creep via limits on revision cycles and change orders that detail costs for extra work. A retainer provides access to skills and ensures a freelancer's time, but it needs an SLA and a defined work scope. A value-based pricing model, where payment is tied to results, works if the outcome can be measured. Practical application involves a 30% to 50% advance payment, followed by payments upon reaching project milestones. Contracts should cover ownership of the work, payment deadlines, e.g. net 7, 15, or 30 days, late payment penalties, and a cancellation fee. Pricing should be based on desired earnings, capacity, and taxes, not arbitrary figures. Discounts should be given for larger projects or predictable work, not just because they are asked for. It's important to monitor time spent and profit on each project, keep some capacity available, avoid accepting every single job, and never charge less than the full cost of doing business, as this damages both quality and reputation. The 78th fact. Extended warranties and protection against accidental damage often appear as a sensible safeguard, but the economics are dictated by failure statistics. The failure curve for equipment is similar to a bathtub shape. Initial defects manifest within the first few months, covered by the standard warranty or exchange. Then a lengthy period of reliability follows, and widespread wear and tear happens closer to the end of the product's lifespan, when most people are already considering an upgrade. Paid warranties benefit the seller because the average repair bill and the likelihood of an incident are less than the policy's cost. For the buyer, they make sense for items with costly repairs and for usage that is prone to damage, like portable electronics handled by children. Always check the exclusions. Moisture, screen damage, battery degradation, and unauthorized repairs are frequently excluded. Deductibles and coverage limits will decrease the reimbursement amount. Keep in mind that certain credit cards extend the original warranty period by double. This serves as a complementary option. Another approach is a repair fund. Consistently save a small percentage for potential future malfunctions and replace your device based on its total cost of ownership, TCO, rather than relying on insurance. Fact 79th. The subject of digital inheritance and access to funds is awkward yet financially vital. Store your passwords in a manager that has an emergency access feature for a trusted individual, and keep a second master key sealed offline. Avoid linking two-factor authentication to just one SIM card, as SIM swap can occur with carriers. It's better to use generator apps. Print out your backup codes and place them with your documents. Store hardware keys in pairs, keeping them in separate places. For every financial platform, document the login email, recovery options, account number, and appointed beneficiaries, as many assets are transferred by named directive more quickly than through a general probate process. Configure inheritance access or trusted contacts with major services. Write down instructions in plain language. Specify where accounts are located, how to handle utility payments, and who needs to be informed. Perform annual drills to verify that all access points are functional and up to date. During a crisis, preparedness and clarity are more valuable than technology itself. Fact 80. Installment plans with 0% interest and buy now, pay later (BNPL) services do not always come at no cost. Frequently, the cost is incurred through a discount foregone for paying up front, bundled services, and penalties. To determine the true cost of credit, compare the price offered for installments against the price for a cash payment. The difference represents the effective interest rate. Additionally, factor in any origination fees, payment protection insurance, charges for SMS notifications, and the possibility of a larger final payment. It is crucial to review the payment schedule closely. Failing to make a single installment payment will result in the standard high interest rate being applied to the entire outstanding balance. An installment plan can consume your available credit limit with a bank, negatively impacting your credit utilization ratio and temporarily increasing the cost of other loans. BNPL services fragment purchases into smaller payments, distorting the perception of value. It is advisable to set spending limits and enable automatic payments, and to avoid taking out multiple installment plans concurrently across different retailers. If you possess sufficient funds, aim to negotiate a discount and calculate the total cost of ownership. In some instances, it is more prudent to pay a smaller amount now rather than incur an unnoticed, albeit seemingly smooth, overpayment later. Fact 81. Overall inflation and your personal inflation are distinct. The official index acts as an average, much like the average temperature in a hospital setting. It uses a basket of goods and services averaged across different regions and households. The calculation methods consider factors like product substitutions when consumers switch brands, seasonal changes, and even adjustments for quality. A new product might cost more, but its price per functional unit could be similar. In practice, however, your personal spending patterns differ. A family with children will be more affected by price changes in baby food and related services. Someone working remotely will notice increases in communication and electricity costs more. A renter will be more sensitive to housing price hikes. For this reason, it's beneficial to calculate your personal inflation annually. This involves comparing your spending categories from the previous year with your current expenses, identifying which areas are increasing in price the fastest, and then adjusting your financial objectives, insurance policies, and emergency savings accordingly. Practical protective actions include securing fixed rates when they are advantageous, changing service providers, implementing energy-saving measures, discussing income adjustments, and shifting some available cash from an account earning no interest into low-risk investments that can at least partially offset rising prices. Fact 82nd. Rules for returns, guarantees, and chargebacks are not merely a bureaucratic burden, but represent actual funds that are frequently left unclaimed. Many nations grant consumers extended rights to cancel remote purchases, whereas in-store transactions adhere to distinct timeframes and processes. Payment networks impose restrictions on the period for disputing transactions, post which financial recovery is impossible. A practical approach protects your finances. Retain your receipt and agreement, record the unboxing of high-value electronics on video, formally document any product defects on the day of delivery, and engage solely through official customer support channels, refraining from informal messenger exchanges lacking records. Should a seller procrastinate on issuing a refund, initiate a chargeback claim with your bank, furnishing a chronological account of events and supporting documentation. Refrain from signing any acceptance document without reservations until the product has been thoroughly inspected. Decline any offer of repair in lieu of refund if it conflicts with the stipulated conditions. For services operating on a subscription basis, establish alerts prior to the renewal date and preserve tariff screenshots, as these can prove instrumental in recovering funds during a dispute. Fact 83rd. The concept of passive income sounds ideal, but in practice, it's almost always either income from capital or income from a system you've established and continue to support. Dividends and coupon payments necessitate substantial capital. Approximately 5% per year before taxes yields 50,000 units of currency for every million invested, and this is without any assurance of maintaining purchasing power. Rental income provides a cash flow, but it comes with periods of vacancy, repair costs, and the need to manage people. Royalties and revenue from digital products demand initial work spanning months, followed by continuous updates. Investments managed by others eliminate day-to-day tasks, but do not eliminate market risk or associated costs. The real effectiveness comes from automation. This includes consistent investments in affordable index funds, automated fund transfers, liquidity pools, and straightforward rules for withdrawing funds. All other approaches involve a trade-off. Either you contribute more time and skills, or you accept greater risk and capital commitment. Offers of high passive income with no effort are typically marketing tactics or indicate high-risk ventures. Fact 84th. Stress testing personal finances is like a dry run for difficult financial times, highlighting potential problems beforehand. You should take your budget and investment portfolio and simulate several scenarios: your income falling by 1/3 for half a year, interest rates on variable loans going up, utility and insurance expenses sharply increasing, markets declining by 30 to 40% with a slow recovery. You need to determine in figures how long your reserves will last, which essential payments will be reduced first, which assets you will sell and according to what guidelines, what is the minimum lifestyle you can sustain without accumulating debt. For your investment portfolio, establish rules for rebalancing and create a liquidity plan for 6 to 24 months to avoid selling riskier assets when their value is at its lowest. For your debts, develop a strategy for negotiating with lenders and refinancing, having a complete set of necessary documents ready in advance. It's also important to check for concentrations, the proportion of funds tied to your employer, a single currency, or a single bank. The outcome is a concise crisis response plan, including contact information and a checklist, so that when a crisis hits, you can act according to a plan rather than improvising. Fact 85th. Geography is a financial choice as significant as selecting a career path. The comparison between a high-cost, high-income city and a low-cost, low-income city should be made only after accounting for taxes, housing expenses, and the value of one's time. Large cities typically provide higher wages and better career advancement prospects, but they also come with increased costs for rent, transportation, parking, and entertainment. Suburban living offers more spacious residences, but this often necessitates owning a car or cars, incurring costs for insurance, fuel, and commute time that could otherwise be invested. The rise of remote work alters this dynamic. When income is linked to a metropolitan market while expenses are based on regional prices, this disparity can significantly boost savings. However, it's crucial to factor in taxes and local surcharges, the quality of healthcare and educational facilities, and climate-related expenses, such as heating and cooling. Overlooked expenses can include utility bills, local levies, property and auto insurance, and the availability of public transit. It is advisable to perform a total cost of ownership (TCO) over a 3 to 5 year period, factoring in the likelihood of moving, rather than being swayed by romantic notions of weekend getaways. Your place of residence acts as a monthly financial driver, either propelling you forward or holding you back. Fact 86th. The most significant savings opportunities lie not in small purchases, but in the three main spending areas: housing, transport, and food. Renting a place a bit further from the city center but with good transport links, sharing accommodation, or opting for a smaller living space often have a greater effect than numerous small adjustments. For owned properties, the interest rate, insurance, utility bills, and repair costs are more impactful for savings than minor household expenses. In terms of transport, one should compare the total cost of owning a car, including depreciation, insurance, parking, and upkeep, with the expenses for public transportation, car sharing services, and infrequent taxi use. Selling a second car can sometimes lead to monthly savings of hundreds. For food expenses, instead of focusing on restaurant receipts, it is advisable to change regular habits. Meal planning, shopping from a prepared list, and cooking at home help to curb spontaneous decisions to order food. The one major change annually is effective, as a single structural step compensates for the impact of 10 minor ones. Minor details are also important, but only after the main three spending categories have been managed. Otherwise, it resembles an attempt to empty water from a boat that continues to leak. The 87th fact addresses identity theft as a financial emergency with a defined procedure. The initial step involves documenting the incident by submitting claims to the bank and law enforcement or the relevant regulatory body, blocking cards, updating passwords, and invalidating active sessions. The second step is to freeze your credit history if possible, which will prevent new credit from being opened without your authorization. At the very least, enable alerts for any credit inquiries. The third step is to update all vulnerable identification details: your email address, which often serves as primary access, phone numbers used for two-factor authentication, and to re-establish access using recovery codes. Additionally, secure your SIM card with a password through your mobile provider to guard against SIM swap attacks. The fourth action requires reviewing all automatic payments and linked services, including the removal of old devices and tokens. The fifth step is to consistently monitor your bank statements, credit reports, and government service accounts, such as tax portals, as fraudsters may open loans, claim benefits, or even incur fines using stolen personal information. These measures might appear uninteresting on the surface, employing a password manager, hardware or application keys, distinct login credentials, and a dedicated email for financial transactions. However, this routine security is significantly less costly than enduring years of disputes and damaging your credit score. The 88th fact: buying discount points and refinancing to get a lower interest rate involves calculating how long it takes to recoup the cost. You pay approximately 1% of the loan amount for each point up front, and in return, your interest rate drops, for instance, by 0.25 percentage points. This results in a smaller monthly payment. To find the break-even point, divide the total cost of the points by the amount saved each month. This gives you the number of months needed for the discount to start saving you money. If you intend to sell or refinance before this break-even point, you won't recover the extra money you paid. It's crucial to factor in taxes, insurance, fees, balloon payments, and instances where a seller or builder might pay for points as an incentive, as this alters the calculation. For refinancing, the process is comparable. Add up all the initial costs of the transaction and divide by the difference in your monthly payments. Then compare this to how long you plan to keep the property. Always verify the annual percentage rate, APR, not just the stated interest rate. And be wary of attractive offers that feature low monthly payments by extending the loan term, as this can significantly increase the total amount you end up paying. Fact 89th. The concept of FIRE, or financial independence, retire early, might sound like an invitation to perpetual vacation, but it's built on strict discipline and realistic assumptions. The standard 4% rule involves an initial withdrawal of 4% from your portfolio, with adjustments for inflation. This rule is not a natural law, but is derived from historical periods and currencies, and it is sensitive to inflation, taxes, and the sequence of returns in the initial years. More adaptable guardrails propose reducing withdrawals during unfavorable years and increasing them during favorable ones, thereby preserving a range of stability. Key elements include the structure of expenses, fixed versus variable, a liquidity reserve for 2 to 3 years, and the diversification of income sources. Part-time jobs, royalties, and projects help mitigate the risk of experiencing unfavorable economic conditions. Medical insurance and taxes are distinct expense categories that are often underestimated. FIRE represents not a desire to retire regardless of the cost, but the attainment of the freedom to select one's work and lifestyle rhythm, provided essential living costs are met with a high degree of certainty. In this context, a conservative planning approach and stress testing hold greater importance than romanticized notions. The 90th fact: benefits offered by employers and the state are money on the table that people miss out on more often than they realize. Employer matching contributions to retirement savings essentially offer instant returns on the money put in. Company insurance plans, dental coverage, eyewear reimbursement, EAP, employee assistance programs, payment for training and certifications, and subsidies for transportation and meals all serve to lower your personal spending. You should verify what is needed to access them: minimum service length, specific enrollment periods, any personal contributions required, and academic achievement standards for training. Government programs encompass tax credits for dependents and home loans, subsidies for housing rent and utilities, preferential loans, matched savings plans, and health checkups. While the exact offerings differ by nation, the core idea is consistent. Once a year, go through a checklist of available benefits and collect the necessary paperwork. Additionally, employers frequently provide discounts through their partners, covering services from phone plans to gym memberships. These less obvious budget components do not substitute for your salary, but collectively add up to a significant financial impact in the long run. Fact 91. Your financial calendar matters more than an ideal app because established routines beat spontaneous actions. Structure your year around key dates. Payday should trigger automatic pay-yourself-first transfers to your reserve fund, investments, and specific goal savings. The first day of each quarter is for reviewing your net worth and adjusting your investment portfolio. A month before major annual expenses like insurance premiums, taxes, or car servicing, ensure the necessary funds are set aside in designated accounts. Seasonal expenses also need financial planning. Holidays, gifts, back-to-school costs, and winter heating bills are best managed by setting aside equal amounts throughout the year. Implement a 3-level control system. Automate regular expenses, use reminders for occasional payments, and have a monthly money management day to finalize the period's finances and note any mistakes. Introducing minor obstacles can boost discipline. Use a separate, low-limit card for subscriptions, impose limits on inter-account transfers, and apply a cooling-off period before making significant purchases. A calendar turns your financial life from unpredictable events into a clear path, reducing the frequency and cost of unexpected issues. Fact 92nd. Appointing beneficiaries serves as a quiet method for money transfer, often proving quicker and more straightforward than a will. Accounts labeled Payment Upon Death or Right Transfer Upon Death allow assets to be moved to the named individual via application and death certificate, sidestepping standard inheritance proceedings. For retirement and insurance products, this is typically the default method. However, this mechanism works both ways. If an ex-spouse is named in the application, they will receive the funds, regardless of what the will dictates. Therefore, the guideline is to revise beneficiaries after each significant life change, such as getting married, divorcing, having a child, moving, or making substantial purchases. It's also crucial to define proportions and designate contingent recipients should the primary one be unable to receive the money. Shared account ownership offers efficiency but introduces potential risks like access by the other owner's creditors, disputes, and tax implications. All documentation should have consistent full names and dates stored as a package with a guide for family members during the initial week. Organized paperwork saves months and considerable expense. Fact 93rd. Owning a pet brings not only happiness, but also a long-term financial commitment with predictable overall costs. The initial outlay covers vaccinations, microchipping and registration, spaying or neutering, essential gear like a litter box or carrier, and a scratching post or cage. Subsequently, you'll need to budget for high-quality food, yearly shots and vet checkups, parasite prevention, insurance if accessible, grooming, and potential emergency vet visits. A sudden surgery could drain a month's budget, necessitating either insurance or a separate savings fund for your pet. Traveling with your pet incurs extra expenses for boarding facilities or for the necessary documents and transport. Renting accommodation might involve pet deposits and cleaning charges. Opting for inexpensive equipment often means replacing it often. Good quality items endure for years and prove more cost-effective over time. Being sensible means focusing on prevention. Dental plaque, obesity, and lack of exercise will eventually lead to costly veterinary care. When selecting a breed, factor in potential genetic health issues and adult size. Plan your finances for your new companion well ahead of time rather than assuming you'll figure it out later. Fact 94th. Housing rental is an agreement with financial aspects, and the majority of problems are settled upon entry. Record the inspection via a Reception Transfer Act, including photos or videos of every defect, meter readings, and the key inventory. Otherwise, the deposit turns into a word-against-word argument. Review the clauses concerning early termination, rent increases, and communal charges. Whose name the accounts are under, what services are covered, how payments adjust with tariff hikes or CPI adjustments, and who is responsible for minor, major repairs. Are subleasing and domestic animals forbidden? Are there penalties for additional occupants? Breaking the conditions can prove more expensive than anticipated. Specifically, clarify the notice periods for vacating and the process for getting the deposit back. Account details, cutoff dates, and reasons for withholding funds. Best practices advocate for payments solely based on the contract and avoiding cash-in-hand transactions, obtaining tenants' civil liability insurance, and using a separate utility account for expense monitoring. A correct beginning saves stress and considerable money down the line. Fact 95 points out that hobbies and their associated technology are governed by the same TCO principles as machines. Payment is due not for the initial purchase, but for each hour of operation. A camera encompasses not only the body and lenses, but also memory cards, batteries, a bag, a tripod, software, servicing, and depreciation. A bicycle involves not just the frame, but also maintenance, tires, tools, storage, and equipment. The 100-hour rule is beneficial. If you are confident you will log at least 100 hours of practice in the first year, acquiring mid-level equipment is sensible. Otherwise, consider renting, purchasing a refurbished used item, or utilizing club access. Implement a pilot approach. Renting for a month, allowing for 2 to 3 consecutive weekends of use, provides a realistic assessment of your engagement without falling into the sunk cost fallacy. Plan for resale from the outset. Select brands and models with good marketability, and meticulously preserve original packaging and receipts. This will reduce depreciation upon selling. Include consumables and training in your budget immediately. Professional instruction is frequently more cost-effective than numerous rounds of trial and error. This way, your hobby will serve as an energy source rather than a continuous drain of unpredictable expenditures. Fact number 96. A significant acquisition functions as a small project with distinct phases, and it is the methodical approach that leads to financial savings. The initial step involves defining the objective, identifying the problem the item is intended to resolve, estimating its practical lifespan in the first year, measured in hours, kilometers, or sessions, and exploring available alternatives, such as renting, purchasing pre-owned items, engaging in shared ownership, or adopting a service rather than ownership model. Subsequently, the total cost of ownership is projected over a specified period, encompassing the initial purchase price, associated costs for delivery or registration, acquisition of supplementary accessories, insurance premiums, maintenance expenses, the cost of consumables, and the anticipated depreciation upon resale. In instances where a 0% installment plan is offered, it is crucial to compare this with the price for immediate cash payment. The subsequent stage is the pilot phase. This may involve a test drive, a weekend rental, or a month-long demonstration period, serving as the most effective antidote to self-deception. A mandatory cooling-off period of 48 to 72 hours is implemented, along with the principle of funding the purchase exclusively from dedicated savings, goals piggy bank, rather than utilizing credit. It is essential to verify the terms and conditions for product returns and to confirm the proximity of authorized service centers. The concluding phase involves devising an exit strategy. This entails assessing the marketability of the chosen model and estimating its potential resale value at a discount. Adhering to such a checklist helps to curb impulsive purchasing decisions and results in savings of a significant percentage of the allocated budget. Fact 97. The selection of a financial advisor concerns the structure of their interests. The crucial questions are, to whom do they owe allegiance and how are they compensated? A fee-only model minimizes conflicts of interest, as payment is either fixed, hourly, or a percentage of the client's assets. A fee-based model combines service fees with commissions, while commission-only arrangements are funded by product sales. Inquire about fiduciary responsibility. Is the advisor legally bound to prioritize your interests over their own, or do they adhere to a less stringent suitability standard? Verify the advisor's registration and disciplinary record with the relevant regulatory body. Ascertain who holds custody of your assets, and whether the advisor has the authority to access your funds without your explicit consent. Understand their income streams from insurance, funds, and loans, and request a full disclosure of all commissions, both as percentages and monetary values. Ask for a sample investment policy, the reporting format, the anticipated frequency of meetings, and a strategy for managing crises. A key indicator of their professionalism is their readiness to advise against a product if it's not suitable for you, and their ability to manage your budget and risks rather than solely focusing on fund selection. The 98th fact: a bubble in the market seldom announces its arrival with fanfare. It's characterized by widespread credit leverage, new paradigm mentions in headlines, and simultaneous growth across the board, irrespective of quality. Indicators are an explosive influx of new participants, tales of fast money, aggressive leverage products for retail investors, companies with no profits trading on future fantasies, and justifications like "it's different this time." Safeguards are simple and mundane. Set limits on individual asset and sector exposure, ban margin for long-term objectives, rebalance according to defined corridors, maintain a documented investment policy with clear red lines, and keep a liquidity buffer to prevent selling at the lowest points. Proactive humility is beneficial. Expect future returns to be lower than recent ones, and avoid planning based on the last 2 years' performance charts. Crucially, remember that even if the bubble is not where you anticipate, discipline and diversification will endure more potential scenarios than any compelling narrative. Fact 99th. Cross-border money transfers are governed by 3 categories of rules: payment systems, foreign exchange controls, and taxation. When calculating a transfer, the total cost is considered: your bank or services fee, correspondent bank's charges, the exchange rate difference, and the time it takes for funds to arrive. It can sometimes be more cost-effective to send money in the local currency, allowing the recipient to handle the conversion themselves. KYC/AML regulations necessitate providing documentation that verifies the source of funds and the transaction's purpose. It is advisable to retain copies of agreements, invoices, and bank statements. Certain countries impose restrictions on exporting currency and require reporting for overseas accounts, while others mandate the declaration of foreign assets and earnings. Agreements to prevent double taxation are in place, but their application involves a specific process requiring the submission of certificates and forms. Adhering to regulatory requirements is crucial. Attempting to circumvent rules can result in account suspension. A practical approach involves ascertaining the regulations of both jurisdictions beforehand, diversifying risks across different service providers, conducting a trial transfer, locking in the exchange rate, and allowing for extra time as international transactions introduce additional complexities. Fact 100. Personal finance is won not by the brilliance of ideas, but by the repeatability of systems. Income is increased through skills and negotiations. Expenses are adjusted through the Big Three. Risks are covered by reserves and insurance. Debts are kept under control. Capital is gathered with cheap, diversified instruments. And decisions are locked into a calendar, rule, and policy. Automation of contributions and goal piggy banks choose you on days when willpower is absent. Accounting and quarterly balance sheets restore your connection to reality. Rebalancing and limits save you from your own emotions. Documents and beneficiaries save months for your loved ones. The world changes, but the invariants are the same. Spend less than you earn, pay yourself first, avoid expensive mistakes, value liquidity, count the full cost, and respect risk. This is not magic, but a craft, and it works when it is done.